Welcome back everybody, this is Awais back with another video on the channel. This is going to be the fourth video of the series in which we are creating this expense tracker application. So before we start the video, I want to show you what we're going to achieve in this video. So in this video, we are going to use this model, add an expense with the description, select the type, click on add button, and we will show the data here. I can add multiple expenses, like whatever the expense that you want to add with the description, and then type, click on add, and we got this second expense there as well. This is using a publisher subscriber pattern using RxJS. We'll use RxJS behavior subject, and the way we are passing the data to a dashboard component, it's very nice. So you will learn a lot about publisher and subscriber pattern in this video. Now also, before we start, I would like to show you, this is the series that I've been creating. So I will drop a link of this playlist in the description of this video. And also I want to show you my GitHub account in which you have this expense tracker public repository, so you can download the source code. If you like the video, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you think this tutorial series or workshop series helped you a lot, learning Angular, and also how you can start a project from scratch, prototype it, create its task in Trello, and then actually build an application. And once you build it, you can deploy it, and all this course or all this source code will be available freely on my GitHub. If you think it's really useful, please help me out by donating. There's a link of a PayPal in the description of this video. And this will basically keep me putting out more content like this. Thanks for watching, and let's get started. This is going to be the fourth video of a series that I've been creating on IONIC. It's basically a complete app development course from scratch. So here's a playlist that you can subscribe to or have a look at that from the first part, second part, third part. So this is going to be the fourth part of the series. Now what we're building in this series is this expense tracker application. Here we got this card, we got this button, we click on that and it opens up the model. We can add amount and description and select the type of our expense, and that gets stored into our database, and we should see that here. So this is the fourth part. In this video, we are going to work on creating our data service. So data service is some sort of service which will handle all sort of data and the current state of our application. So first of all, I am going to go to this add expense model. Here we got this amount, description, and type. I create these two buttons, and these are actually very hard to tab. So I'm going to go to add expense component, and here I would like to create ion grid. Save the file, and I should see this button side by side now. I'm going to click on that plus button, and here we got this add button and then the cancel button. So cancel button got this danger color now. This is basically a default color which is provided by IONIC. We're going to create two services. One is going to be data service, and the second one would be action service. So in the services folder, right click, go to new, and then click on Angular dependencies. And here we are going to create a service here. Now here we can choose one of these, ng add command, but actually I had to go to this Angular semantics. And from here, I can select which one I want to create. So I can create service. Let's just double click on that, and it's going to ask the name, and the name would be data service. Okay, let's just leave that data, click OK, and we should see that data service there. Now we should be able to create this in a folder. So I'm going to go to new, go to directory, and then just say data, and let's just move these two services within that folder. Once I've moved them, we're going to go to new, and then go to Angular semantics, and we're going to create another service here, and this time it's going to be action/action. So now it's going to put that into this folder. So we got its action service there as well. Now we got two services. it's time for us to actually create some interfaces as well. So I have this folder here. I'm going to go to new and I create a new file here. It's going to be TypeScript file. To name this expense interface. Press enter and we got that. Now here we're going to use export interface and we can say expense interface. Here we are going to define what are the attributes are going to be for our interface. So as we know, we need to have an amount. Okay, we can add that as number. We need a description. That would be string, and then we need a type. Okay, the type would be string as well. So we got these three things. We can add more stuff later, but for now, this is going to be our expense interface. So these are the three things that we require when we save this data or this expense into our local storage. Now, once we got that, I'm going to go to our data service, and this is going to be the main service that we're going to be working with throughout our workshop. Here, I'm going to create a private read only, and that would be, let's just say, expenses, and we're going to use RxJS, and this is going to be a type of expense interface. Now you're gonna need to learn a little bit about RxJS. That provides a lot of things for us. So here we got this private variable which holds the current expenses, and I'm going to go and create some getters and setters for that. So let's just do generate, and I'm going to use these expenses. Click OK. The default generator from PyCharm, we need to modify this. I'm going to get rid of this get keyword, and I'm going to use get expenses as a function name, and it's going to return this observable, or we can say behavior subject of expenses. Okay, now another problem here is that it's actually going to return this observable, not it's actually the value. So I'm going to get rid of this observable, and we are going to say return expenses array. Okay, because this is going to be an array of that expenses, so we'll just add that here as well. Okay, and then this is going to return get a value. Now I'm going to save this file, and also we need to be able to set expenses, so just set expenses, and it's going to return observable, and that would be just any. Okay, now I'm going to use a parameter for this function, which would be expenses, and that would be a type of expense interface, and it's going to be an array for that. And what we're supposed to return from here, so we're saying that we're returning this observable type any. Change this observable to promise, and the type would be void. Okay, and then I'm going to return this dot expenses dot next, and that will take as expenses. Now once we do that, it's still causing an issue because we actually not returning a promise. So what we want to do is we want to create this as async function, and now we save this file, and this becomes our async function, which means we're returning promise void. We got this get expenses, we got this set expenses, and I think for now it's all good. Here we can say async function as well, and I'm going to make this as promise and type of expenses, and there you go. Now we are returning a promise from here as well, which will have this value. So let's go and utilize these two things. So first of all, I'm going to set an expense, and then we are going to grab that expense. Now we do that in action service. So action service is a service which will inject the data service. So we can say data service type of data service. Okay, now here we can use some functions here. First of all, let's create an expense. So here I'll just say demo expense, and that would be type of expense interface, and we can create a const as expense equal to, and that would be let's say what it's going to take. It's actually not this way. Whereas this dot demo expense equal to, and that should take amount, and we can say 50, and it's needed description. So we said this is demo expense, and then we need to have a type. So right now type is like, you know, just say general, but we'll have a proper typing done as well. So here we got this expense, we got this demo expense. Now we're going to use this this dot data service, actually the data service, to set those expense and then grab those expense. So we can say test function, and then we are going to call this function. So within this function, we can say this dot data service dot set expense, and then we are going to set an expense, this dot demo. So first of all, let's add that in an array. So we can say this dot demo expense, and that should be it. And then once that's properly set, then within our promise, we are going to say get me that expense and log it into the console to we just verify that it's been logged. So we can say this dot data service dot get expenses, okay, and dot then whatever the value that we get, we are going to log that to console. Okay, so we can say log the value there. I'm going to save the file. We can see that it's been compiled successfully. Now we can call this test function in our constructor. So let's just see that once our application gets compiled, if we can see that logged on the console. Okay, I'm going to save this bit. Now these are injected at the root levels, then that means it should be fine. I'm going to refresh this, and now we can see we actually didn't have that data service created or action service created yet, because we haven't used that in any of the interface. So what I'm going to do is to inject this action service in our add expense component and call this function from there. So let's save this bit. I'm going to go and open this add expense TypeScript file. And then here we're going to inject our action service. So I can say private. Okay. And then in the constructor function, we can call that this dot action service dot test function. And now when I just refresh the application, click on this button, and here we got says we cannot read the property of undefined next. The reason for that, if we go and take a look at our data service, we haven't initialized these expenses in our constructor function. So we're going to do this dot expenses equal to new behavior subject, and initial value is null. Okay, now if I save application and click on this plus button, and we should see this object which has this amount. Let me just bring this up a bit. Okay, so we got this amount now, 50. This is the demo expense and general data. So our data is getting stored and we can retrieve that. So if I close this bit, and then also I'm actually going to move this on the right side. Let me just give a bit of space there. And click on this plus button, and here we got this object again. Now we got our placeholder, or a property which holds our expenses. Now it's time for us to actually take a look at how we can store this bit on here and then show the data there. So that's going to be our next agenda. So for that, actually I forgot to create some of the tasks. I'm just gonna follow the proper pattern. So I'm gonna say here create action and data service. Okay, and then create a demo expense. Also create getter and setters for expenses property. So in this case, we are done with this bit. We're done with creating demo expense. We create these two services, and next task is going to be create as actually say bind data from add expense, and then store that in data service expenses, and then subscribe to those expenses and show the current data. Now I'm gonna move this bit into in progress. So let's verify this. So what we want to do here, first of all, we are going to actually create a form. We actually already created the form, but when it says create a form, then we are going to use bind a form data to an variable whose type would be expense interface, and then call setter of data service, which should store the expense in expenses behavior subject. Okay, let's save this bit, and now we understand what we're supposed to do. I'm gonna go back to the code, add expense component. Here we got this add expense form. I'm gonna click on this plus button. It opens up the form. One thing that we're missing in our interface, which would be, let's just go to expense interface, and I'm gonna just type created on, this would be a type of date. Okay. And also we're going to install another library called Moment. A Moment is a really good library. Let me take you to there. So that would be Moment.js. Let's click on this. It's basically a date and time library in JavaScript. Any kind of date and time conversion you want to do, this is one of the best libraries that you can find online, and I would highly recommend it. It's free, open source, so you can have a look at this. We're going to use this. So what I'm going to do is install that, and here's a npm script that I'm going to copy, and then I'm going to paste that here. Let's press enter, and once our Moment.js is properly installed, we should be able to see that in package.json file. Here I'm expecting this to appear. So there you go, we got Moment 2.4.4. That's all good now. So let's save this file, and then we're gonna go and create a date from a moment. So let's go here, add expense. We got this create on date, and then I'm going to save this pretty much everything. We're going to go back to terminal and start the server. So I'll just do npm run start, or we can say IONIC serve command. So once our server is running, we should see our app is functioning. And then I'm going to, inside this on init, we're going to actually create a function here, and we call that on on init maybe, and we want to see what is the data coming in from this form group. In a previous tutorial videos, I probably have shown you about the form group. So we're going to go to Angular documentation, click on forms, and here we got this reactive forms, and here you can see we can create a forms by using this form control, and we can group them together as well. So that's what we've already done. To get the value, we want to find out how do we get the value. So this is the example that I took, and saving form data. Then we're going to use this ng submit. That's all right. And then we're going to use this value. Okay, so in the initialize function, we can say console.log this dot add form expense dot value. Let's see what is the current value we have here. Let's save the file, and our process is compiling. Now, one error that we were expecting to get would be we're not actually creating this created on date as well in our expenses, but for now it should be fine. Let's just refresh the application on this page. And I'm going to click on this plus button, and after that initialize, we can see we got amount, description, and type. Okay, so I would like to add a date here as well. But first, you can see on our terminal, we have this problem where expense interface is actually not properly followed in action service. So we're going to go to action service, and here I would like to just create it on, and that will take a date. For now, we just say it's new date there, and that should resolve this error on a terminal. Okay, but we're using moment.js. For that, I'm going to create a new service there. So we'll just do Angular semantics. And then here, I'm going to select a service, and I'd say date/date. Let's click on OK. And we should see another folder there which says date. Okay, and that's actually looking similar to data service. So I'm just gonna get rid of that. The time would be probably it probably caused some sort of like a issue by reading this very hard. So we can say DateTime. Let's press enter, and we should have this date and time service now, and that should go inside the folder. So we said DateTime. I'm going to select this bit and paste that within that folder. Let's import moment.js in our date and time service. So the syntax would be import static as moment from moment. Okay, now I'm going to save this bit, and we should have our date and time service properly injected, and we're going to create some functions there. So first function is get current date. Okay, and that would be a type of date, and it should return a moment, and that's it. Now moment's got some problem. He says moment is missing the following parameters: type date. So because this will actually returns a date, so what we need to do is call this .toDate. Okay, now this should fix the problem. We got the current date. Let's go to add expense component and inject our date and time service. I'm just gonna fix the indentation here. And then we also need this private date time service. Okay, now it's done. We can use that. I'm going to get rid of this action service function here. We don't need that anymore. That was just a demo data. I'm actually going to go here, and we're actually going to get rid of this demo expense as well from here. Okay, and then here we can just get rid of that as well. Now I'm going to save this file. We go back to add expense, and here we want to actually create this pattern where we can publish event to action service, and action service is responsible for doing all what it's supposed to do, and inform the data service with the new data. So I'll show you how you can achieve that. First of all, let's just not worry about that too much. I'm gonna click on this minus button to minimize our terminal. Okay, so now we need a date there. So when I click on this add button, I should be able to create this expense with the current date and time. So for that, we're gonna create a function in our action service. I'm going to say create expense. Okay, and this should expect this expense, and that would be type of expense interface. Now what it's going to return promise void. Okay, we're going to create this async code as well. Now here we are going to first of all log the expense and see if we are able to get that expense. Okay, expense, that should be it. We're going to go back to add expense component, and here we are going to just create a function init create expense. Okay, And here we basically are going to call that function. It's going to return nothing, and it's going to take this dot action service dot create expense, and it's going to pass in some data. So on the fly, we can say const expense equal to, and we can say this dot add expense form dot value. Okay, we got that. And then also we are going to use this expense, and I'm going to use the dot symbol, and we can say created on, and I can say equal to this dot date and time service dot get current date. Okay, and then we can pass in expense to our this function, and then we can call in. Okay, when that's all good, then please go ahead and log to the console that expense was created. Okay, now we got this initialize create expense. We're gonna go to our add expense HTML file, and here we got this bit here. So I'm gonna just change something. Let's just say general. We're gonna do shopping, and then say movie dinner. Okay, I'm gonna change the name here as well, general, and that would be shopping. All right, so we got these two buttons now, guys. I'm gonna do one more thing here, because we don't need this cancel button, because cancel button is just going to dismiss this add expense. So instead of this cancel button here, a user can tap on this cross on the top right. So because of that, I'm actually going to get rid of this bit. So I'm just gonna move this outside, get rid of that, and then move this outside as well. And then in this case, we don't need a grid anymore. So we actually wasted time. Now you know how, the process of development, you always have this kind of thing that you did something, but that's not really useful. And then you go and get rid of this. I'm going to use this BR tag there to have just a line break and give it a bit of space there. Okay, that's good. I'm actually going to change the size for that as well. We can just say large for now. And let's see what we got. So we got this large button, that's all good. We got general shopping movie. I'm gonna select shopping, and I'm gonna say 45 or 40. This is the demo expense. I'm gonna click on this add, and now it's not doing anything because we need to call that event. So I'm gonna use this init create expense. Let's save this bit, and we can say 30. This is the demo expense. A type we can select as shopping, click on add, and there you go. We got this amount 30, description shopping, and then create it on with exact date and time. So we got the data there. Now within this function, I'm actually going to, once this is actually logging, I'm going to call this dismiss model. Okay, and it will actually dismiss this model as well. So let's try it out. Click on this plus button, type some stuff here, select something, click on add. We got the data, and then the model was dismissed as well. So this is like a first prototype for adding expense there. Now, next thing what we're supposed to do is actually store the data into a data service and bind the data here in our dashboard page. Go to Trello, and let's just create another task for us. So we say bind the data from add expense form, store that in a data service expenses, and subscribe to those expenses, show the current data. So it's still in progress. We're going to go to action service. Here we are logging it. I'm going to remove this line, and I'm going to inject this data service. Or actually it's already there. So what we want to do here is this dot data service dot set expenses, and we are going to set an expense. So this is going to be an array of expense. Here I'll just add an array and then just pass in an expense, and then we are going to just return this bit. So we'll just say return. Okay, cache the error as well right here because we're returning this as a promise. So I'm going to go here dot catch error. So if there is any error, that will be cached. So let's just do something like console.log error, and we can pass in, hey, give me an error. And that's about it. This function is all good now. So we can try it out. So I'm going to click on this plus button, type an amount, add a description, select a type, click on add button, and we got this expense was created. So that means there was no errors. It was successfully created. Now we are going to create this expense, but we want to see the data coming here. So for that, we're just going to do some work in our dashboard page. So let's go there. So I'm going to get rid of this file and open dashboard component. And here we are going to, first of all, inject a data service because we need to subscribe to the data. So we go private data service. Okay, once we got the data service, we're going to subscribe to, an behavior subject from a data service. So here we got this async get expense. We want to create a subscription there as well. So I will use this get expenses subscription. Okay, and that would just return behavior subject with expense interface and an array. Okay, and that would return this this dot expenses, and that's about it. Here we got some typo error here, say unused method. For now it's unused, but we will use it right here. So in the constructor function, we are going to create expenses, which will be an expenses interface and array. Okay, now we are going to actually use this expenses to show the data. So what we need to do is we need to subscribe to our expenses from our data service. So in ng-on-init, I'm going to use this dot data service dot get subscription dot subscribe, and then this is gonna take a next function which will have a value. Okay, and also it's going to take error, which again will have error if there is any error, and then it's going to complete, and this is where our subscription is complete. All right, so now what we're going to do here is we want to, in the next function, we want to store that expense coming in from our expenses into this expenses array. Also store that expense into our data service, in a local storage. Okay, we worry about getting the data from a local storage later, but let's find out what we can do with our showing the data right now. So here I've got this next, and I'm going to use this dot expenses dot push, and also I'm going to first initialize this in a constructor function. So we can say this dot expenses is equal to empty array, and here we're going to push this value 0. Okay, and then also when I'm going to on destroy, so let's just do ng on destroy. I'm gonna have to implement that on destroy. We're gonna add all the members, And then here I'm going to, unsubscribe to the subscription there. So first of all, here we just directly storing that, and let's try what we have here. So I'm going to create, now we got a lot of errors. It says type cannot read the property of 0 of null next in the dashboard page. That's all right. That's where, because there's a problem here. So I'm going to click on this one. Let's create an expense quickly, and then click on add. And once you click on add, expense was created. And then here we want to be able to show that expense into this expenses array. So I'm going to go to dashboard. Let's bind expenses in our HTML. So here we got the card. I'm actually going to use this ng for loop, and I can say let expense of expenses. Okay, and it's gonna run a loop for that and create these cards for us. Okay, so first of all, amount should come from expense dot amount, and then here we got a description, which would be expense dot description, and date and time would come from date and time. So here we can say expense dot created on. We can always use a date to format that date, and then the type we can say expense dot type. All right, that should be it. Now let's go and create a new expense. Here we're still getting an error because we gotta fix something here later, but we just worry about later. So I'm gonna select something like that. I'm gonna click on add expense. Here the expense was created, but there was a problem here because that's why it wasn't really subscribed. So I'm gonna do a console.log there, and then just do a log. Let's see if we actually seeing that expense coming through here of subscribing to it. So let's just do add. It was created, but nothing we actually logged. So what we want to do here is, let's just say subscription, and I'm going to use this subscription alike. Okay, and I'm going to create a variable. This is a this dot subscription equal to this bit. Let's give it a shot. So I'm going to click on this plus button. Let's type an amount, type description, general, add, and here we got this expense was created, but we actually didn't see any expense here. What is the problem here? So the problem could be because this is an expense array, and we're getting this value as index 0, which is not the right way to do it. So I'm actually going to, for now, I'm going to say this dot expenses equal to a val. Let's save this bit, and now we're going to click on this plus button, type an amount, description, shopping, add, and there we go. We got this March 2, 2020 type is shopping. We got the description there, and we got an amount there. Let me just click on this plus again. We're going to say 500, and I can say this is the demo expense. I'm going to select the type to as a dinner, click on add, and we should be able to see that this is the demo expense March 2020 and type is dinner. So there we go. We are successfully subscribing to data now. We got our skeleton or framework of this publisher and subscriber pattern done. And I would like to add a functionality where we'll add multiple expenses and show them here. Now current framework got some flaws because here we are expecting this an array to be set. So instead of that, I'm actually going to change some stuff here. First of all, I'm going to change this as an interface, an array. And for the getter, let's just get rid of all the arrays because it's not going to be an array anymore. We're just going to use a push method to push the new expense. And I'm going to change right click and then refactor and rename this bit to just an expense. Enter. And that should be it. Now we're going to go to add expense. Here we are creating an expense, passing it down We got a log there, we're dismissing model, and that's all good. We're gonna go to add expense. Here it's taking, hey, it's not an array anymore, so I'm just gonna get rid of this bit. Okay, let's save this, and now we're gonna go to dashboard. Now it's not gonna come as, you know, your array. So what we need to do is, first of all, let's initialize this. So this dot expenses, I'm gonna set that to an empty array. Okay, and then we're gonna use this push method to push the value. Okay, we should call this as expense. All right, and that would be an expense, and we're gonna push that an expense there as well. We're gonna use an if there's a problem here. I'll show you quickly, but let's try this now. So error there, the reason why we're getting error is like cannot read the type of amount of null, so it's like a template error. Here I would like to just comment this line out, save the file, and let's see if we are getting the error now. So no more error, we're getting this as a null. This is all good now. And then here I'm gonna say if expense not equal to null, then this dot expenses dot push an expense. All right, this should fix the problem now. All right, so no error. If I click on this plus button, I'm gonna add an amount, description, and then type, click on add. And now it says event was created, and we see the data here. I'm gonna click on this plus again, add another expense, click on type as dinner. I'm gonna click on add, and there you go, we got another expense added there. Click on this plus button, and then add some description, add as a shopping, click on add, we got the third expense. Now as you can see, at this stage we have a multiple expenses shown in our dashboard page. Now this is great. Right now we are creating expense. We got this, you know, publisher, subscriber publisher method, which will receive a new expense, and then it will save those expenses there. Now within our action service, when we create an expense, I want to, you know, store this expense into a local storage, and then we will prefix that by date and time. Now when our application initializes, we retrieve those expenses and then we show them at a runtime. So that would be a next part of this tutorial series. And if you did like the video, please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button, and also click on that bell button if you want to keep updated about this series. Okay guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.